Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to, really get into complex topics and pull out what matters. Today, we're looking at something, it might seem like just another company collapsing financially, Kyivmiskbud. But as we start to unpack it, you'll see it's way more tangled. We're talking about, according to our expert source, everything from an alleged construction pyramid scheme to political games and even something called legal nihilism. It's quite a mix. It really serves as a kind of case study, doesn't it? Highlighting these chronic problems in how Kyiv is governed.
It really does. And what's so striking here is how this isn't just an isolated financial mess. It's more like a symptom, of these really deep systemic issues running through Kyiv's local government. And this attempt by the authorities to save the company, they're talking about injecting 2.5 billion Ukrainian hryvnia. That's what, around 63 million US dollars?
A huge sum.
Exactly. But our analysis, particularly from Dr. Morgan, suggests this isn't really a cure. It's more like a painkiller. It might, ease the immediate pain for some, but it doesn't actually treat the underlying disease. It kind of preserves it.
So it kicks the can down the road, basically, not a real fix. And helping us navigate all this complexity, we're relying heavily on the work of Dr. Vyacheslav Morgun. He's a legal expert, right? Specializing in municipal law economics.
That's right. His background is extensive, especially in researching the constitutional and legal foundations of local self-government. His analysis is really key here.
It gives us that critical perspective we need to see the bigger picture.
Absolutely. Dr. Morgan's work is, particularly sharp when you look at the financial underpinnings of local government and this idea of territorial communities as public law entities. It's a framework that really helps understand the depth of this crisis and, crucially, how it hits the ordinary people living in Kyiv.
Okay, so let's start deep in. Dr. Morgan calls this first part the collapse of a systemic pyramid. Kyivmiskbud, founded way back 1955. It wasn't just some builder. It was like the state builder, a pillar of Kyiv's development.
For decades, yeah. It meant reliability, trust, building the city, literally, homes, infrastructure. It was embedded in the public mind as solid.
A household name, really.
Totally, built on decades of public trust. But according to Dr. Morgan's analysis, something really changed after it was privatized in 2004. The allegation is that it shifted from building homes to, being a tool for stripping assets.
Wow. So how could that happen? How could this trusted entity be, flipped like that?
Well, that's the troubling part, turning that huge public trust essentially into a financial drain.
So how did this alleged pyramid scheme actually work? Because pyramid scheme sounds complicated, maybe hidden, but Dr. Morgan says it was surprisingly simple.
Yeah, deceptively simple, actually. He lays out a pretty clear model. Step 1, attract money from investors, often just regular people wanting a home. They trusted the Kyivmiskbud name,
Right, that legacy brand.
Exactly. But instead of that money going into construction, it was allegedly siphoned off, moved through this network of affiliated subcontracting companies.
So like shell companies or related businesses.
Pretty much. Designed to divert the money away from the actual building projects.
So the investments weren't really building apartments. They were just disappearing sideways.
That's the allegation. And the systematic siphoning, it hollowed out the main company. Kyivmiskbud was driven towards financial exhaustion. Projects stalled. Investors left with nothing.
And
then the final step, according to the analysis, push the responsibility for finishing everything onto the city budget, often blaming, external factors, unforeseen issues, not mismanagement.
Convenient. So privatize the profits earlier on and then socialize the losses when it all falls apart.
That's what it looks like. A deliberate draining of resources, ultimately landing on the public's shoulders.
But it gets even darker, doesn't it? Dr. Morgan talks about how this human suffering, people losing their savings, their hopes, becomes a resource itself. Which brings us to the political manipulation angle.
Yeah, that's a really critical part of this analysis. Dr. Morgan looks at that recent decision by the Kyiv City Council, the 2.5 billion UAH recapitalization, and sees it as potentially a pre-election move.
Okay. So using the crisis for political gain, especially with elections potentially on the horizon.
That's the interpretation. It highlights how these financial crises and the desperation they cause can be, cynically exploited.
And this is where it feels particularly grim. You've got thousands of these deceived investors, people who put everything into a home that never materialized. Dr. Morgan calls them an ideal electoral asset. Why?
Think about it. They're a large group. They're unified by this shared disaster. They're emotional, desperate, and incredibly vulnerable to any promise of help.
Right. They just want a solution. Any solution makes them easy to sway.
Precisely. A powerful voting bloc, potentially. And this leads to what Dr. Morgan calls the imitation of activity. Authorities, or maybe specific politicians, step up. They play the role of savior.
Press conferences, big announcements.
Exactly. Simulate action. But here's the catch. Dr. Morgan's assessment is that the 2.5 billion UAH, it's actually not enough. Not enough to finish all the stalled projects.
So the real goal might not be getting everyone their apartments.
That's the implication. The analysis suggests the primary aim could be converting those public budget funds into electoral votes. Buying goodwill, essentially, delaying a real systemic fix. Human suffering becomes political currency.
A tool to win power, not actually solve the problem.
That's the concern raised.
Okay, so this big injection of cash, it leads us straight into the legal minefield, doesn't it? Putting public money into this mess without, it seems, proper checks and balances. That sounds risky.
Extremely risky. And it raises fundamental questions about public trust, accountability, the basics of good governance. When you allocate public money, especially this much, without total transparency and oversight, you're asking for trouble.
So what are the specific legal worries Dr. Morgan points out?
Well, first off, allocating that 2.5 billion UAH without a fully approved plan for completing the projects, no detailed cost estimates, no full independent audit of Kyivmiskbud's current state.
Seems like basic due diligence is missing.
According to the analysis, yes. And under Ukrainian law, this could point to inefficient management of public funds. Potentially, it could be classified as abuse of official position. That's Article 364 of the Criminal Code, misusing authority for gain or harm. Or maybe even Article 210, misuse of budget funds, specifically spending public money improperly. These are serious criminal issues.
And then there's the nature of the company itself. Kyivmiskbud is now a private joint stock company, right? Not state-owned anymore.
Correct. And this is crucial. The territorial community, the city, basically is a shareholder, yes. But legally, it's not obligated to pay off the company's private debts.
So this recapitalization forces the public to cover private business risks.
That's the core of the conflict of interest. Public funds are being used, allegedly, to bail out private commercial failings, with no real guarantee that the people who paid the community members will get their homes.
That's legally shaky.
Extremely. Dr. Morgan argues the decision is wide open to legal challenges, lawsuits in administrative courts, commercial courts, and potentially criminal investigations by bodies like NEBU and SAP.
Can you quickly remind us what NEBU and SAP are?
Sure. NEBU is the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, and SAP is the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office. They're the top dogs for investigating serious corruption, economic crime, official misconduct. Their involvement would mean suspicions of, high-level corrupt deals and abuse of power.
And the lack of a proper audit just makes it worse.
It makes the whole decision legally unsubstantiated, according to the analysis, very vulnerable to being overturned or leading to prosecutions.
So let's bring this down to the ground level. What does all this mean for you if you're living in Kyiv? It sounds like public money that could be used elsewhere is being funneled into this questionable situation.
That's exactly how Dr. Morgan portrays it. The Kyiv community is essentially the main donor in this alleged scheme. And think about the opportunity cost. That 2.5 billion UAH is a massive amount. What could it have done for the city?
Right. What are we missing out on?
Critical repairs for deteriorating bridges like the Metro Bridge, the Peyton Bridge, vital transport links. Much-needed upgrades for the subway system, repairs to the sewage network, which affects health and environment, building housing for internally displaced people, for veterans, folks who desperately need it.
Or even basics like more bomb shelters, modernizing schools, hospitals, things that tangibly improve life.
Exactly. Tangible benefits for everyone. Instead, the analysis frames this as a direct cash injection into a dubious business project, effectively a gift paid for by the community, potentially benefiting those who allegedly drained the company for years.
Not an investment in public good.
Quite the opposite, according to this view. And the fallout. Increased social tension is almost certain. Erosion of trust in local government, that's huge. Plus, it damages the city's reputation for investment. Who wants to invest where public funds are used like this? So the decision seems to directly undermine the community's own interests.
Okay, it's a pretty bleak picture. Given that diagnosis, what does Dr. Morgan actually propose as a way out? He talks about needing decisive, systemic steps, right? Not just tinkering.
Yes, exactly. His proposals aren't about patching things up. They're about fundamentally changing the system to prevent this from happening again. It's about reshaping how the city is governed to serve the public first.
So what are the first steps?
Immediate action. First, cancel that $2.5 billion UAH recapitalization. Stop the bleeding, essentially. Then, launch a full, truly independent audit of Kyivmiskbud. A deep dive, no stone unturned. Financials, assets, everything. Transparency is key.
And he mentioned a unified register.
Yes, a single register of all investors and all assets to bring clarity. Who paid what does the company actually own, get the facts straight. This lays the groundwork for any fair resolution.
What about accountability?
Crucial. Launch criminal investigations, and importantly, confiscate illegally acquired assets from management, from associated people, anyone involved in the alleged scheme. Those recovered funds should go directly into a fund to complete the construction for the victims. It's about justice.
And then there's his big idea, the most fundamental reform.
That's right. This is the key systemic change he advocates, creating a single public law economic entity, the Territorial Community of Kyiv. It sounds complex, but the idea is powerful. Instead of fragmented control, private influence. The community itself legally becomes the main economic actor.
How would that work practically?
It would consolidate all the city's communal resources funds, assets, planning under one structure, directly accountable to the residents. The goal is explicit. Create public good, minimize costs, maximize quality for everyone. It gives the community direct control over the big decisions.
So shifting power back to the people, essentially, through this legal structure.
Exactly. It's designed to make the system serve the public interest directly, making it much harder for private interests or political maneuvering to capture resources, a move toward real accountability.
So wrapping this up, this whole deep dive into Kyivmiskbud, it really underscores that things like transparency, accountability, they aren't just nice ideas in local government. They're absolutely fundamental.
They're the bedrock. Without them, you get situations like this.
Right. This crisis reveals these deep problems, alleged financial schemes, political opportunism, and it's the community that pays the price. Dr. Morgan's analysis suggests only a radical shift, audits, real accountability, maybe even rethinking the whole city management structure can fix this and rebuild trust.
Absolutely. The point is the territorial community of Kyiv, or any community, really shouldn't be treated like a blank check to cover alleged crimes or failures. Bringing the community back to the center of governance, giving it real power. That seems to be the only path towards sustainable development and, frankly, basic justice.
It definitely leaves you thinking, doesn't it? How can you, as a resident anywhere, make sure your community's resources are actually working for you? How do you prevent these kinds of cycles? That's the question we're left with.